Nothing I can recognize. This is nowhere that I've known. With no sign of life at all. I guess that I'm alone. And I feel so secure that I know this can't be real. But I feel good.
And then we get to track 4 on the album, Cuckoo Cocoon. Now, contrary to what many people think, I do not consider this a filler track. It's just a great come down from all the excitement we had on the previous songs, and it's just a really warm sounding, a really cozy sounding song, like something that could have been on Selling England by the Pound. It has like a strong classical piano influence, great flute playing by Peter Gabriel, and I honestly, at 2 minutes, it doesn't overstay its welcome at all. And it just has this warm, cozy feel, like you're under a ton of blankets on a cold winter day. And it's just, I love that atmosphere. And it perfectly describes the subject matter of the song, which concerns Rael being trapped in this cocoon. But he doesn't even care at this point because it's just so cozy and so comforting that he's not complaining. And again, it does kind of sound out of place, like it could have been on Selling England by the Pound or maybe even Foxtrot in tone, but I love the song. I'm just gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10 because I love the atmosphere it brings, and it's just a great little come down before the next song, the extravaganza in the cage.
In memories of their wasted wings.
Coming in at track 5, we got the epic track In the Cage. And I mean, what's there to say about In the Cage? It's one of the big ones on the album, clocking in at about 8 minutes, and it's just one of those legendary Genesis songs. I mean, the band played this song far into the Phil Collins years, usually combining it with in a medley of all the old songs. And that just goes to show the enduring statement that this song made. I mean, this is a definitive Genesis song. And the amazing thing is, Phil Collins sings it just as well, if not better than Peter Gabriel. It just feels like this song was meant for Phil Collins. So definitely one of the few Genesis songs with the longest longevity, and for good reason. I mean, this song is just it's an epic track to say the least. I mean, just the way it just starts off so slow and ominous, and then this Tony Banks organ riff comes in, and this is the genius thing about the song. This organ riff, taken out of context, it would actually sound pretty upbeat, pretty happy, but in the context of the song, which is just the musical the musical distillation of anxiety. I mean, like when you listen to this song, you can really like feel the anxiety is palpable, and that's the amazing thing. So that you have this jaunty keyboard riff that, and honestly, like it feels like it. You don't know what's going on, and then Peter Gabriel comes in, and his voice is so frantic, so anxious, so energetic, and the keyboard riff just takes a totally different spin. And it's genius because from one moment you go from a jaunty keyboard riff into like the most anxious, hair ripping music you can ever imagine, and it's just insanely dramatic. It's supposed to represent Rael being trapped in a cage, and he sees his brother John as well. And at this point, he was alone in this subterranean world, but now he sees that his brother John also got sucked into it. And it's just a perfect musical representation of that anxiety that he's feeling. And the real highlight of the song comes with like the long musical passage in the middle, comprised of some great Mike Rutherford bass work, fantastic Phil Collins drumming, and most of all, Tony Banks, one of his most epic and soaring keyboard solos. I mean, the keyboard solo on this song is just, it's one of the highlights in Tony Banks' entire career, if you ask me. But my favorite part of this song is actually when the keyboard solo ends and that heavy chugging riff comes in, the da-dun, da-dun, ba-dun, da-dun, and then Peter Gabriel comes in with the outside the cage I see my brother John. That part there just Oh, I get shivers just thinking about it. And that's probably my favorite part of the entire song. Just so heavy, so intense. And I also love how it ends with this weird little like funeral march thing right after reprising the main riff of the song. And yeah, definitely one of the highlights on the album. Most people would probably consider this the best because it's one of the one of the rare songs on the album that actually has an expanded musical section in the middle with just vocals kind of bookending the song. So a lot of fans kind of like that because it harkens back to the Foxtrot and Selling England kind of song structures. But yeah, for me, it is not my favorite song on the album. And at this point, let's have a little guessing game on what is my favorite song. But it's not In the Cage, although it's definitely up there, maybe like top three for sure. So yeah, In the Cage definitely gets a 10 out of 10, no question. Definitely. Then we got track 6, The Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging, closing out side 1 of the album. And this song here, it's just basically a short, little quirky, kind of like storyline driven song with some heavy distortion vocal effects on Peter Gabriel's vocals. I never used to be a huge fan of this song, but now I kind of appreciate it. I thought like the vocal effects were kind of distracting, kind of cheesy, but now I really like how the song just builds up and builds and builds, and the haunting guitar in the background's pretty cool, and it's just a fun little weird track. The funny thing about this song is that Brian Eno, who's a musician that I still have to get into. I hear good things about this guy all the time, and it's a shame I haven't checked him out yet. But he was around at the time, and Peter Gabriel asked him to put some vocal effects on his voice. So throughout the album, you'll hear like all these weird vocal effects, which may or may not be a good thing depending on who you ask. And it's funny because to repay Brian Eno, they sent Phil Collins upstairs to drum on his song, and to this day, Phil thinks he felt like a prostitute because the band basically used them to repay Brian Eno because I guess they didn't have the money or whatever, or maybe Brian Eno just did it as a favor to them and they wanted to show their appreciation. So yeah, that's just a funny little story, and yeah, it's just an inoffensive track. Again, it has a nice build up, pretty catchy, kind of like poppy. And yeah, I'd probably give this one a 7 out of 10. So probably one of the weaker points on the album, but it doesn't really overstay its welcome. And then we make our way to side 2 of the album. And if you had any doubts that this is a totally different band that produced Selling England by the Pound, doubt no more. Because opening side 2, is the harsh and heavy hitting Back in New York City. Definitely one of like by far probably the heaviest Genesis song. I mean, with that droning repetitive keyboard riff, the and Peter Gabriel's just harsh, just acidic vocal performance on this song. It just conjures so much imagery of rail, on the streets of New York City, just causing mayhem, being part of this chain gang from a young age. And it's just it kind of acts as like a backup song on the album, kind of like providing some exposition of like what Rail was up to before the series of events that started the album. And again, it's just one of the heaviest hitting Genesis songs. And there's a lot of like weird progressive rock elements as well, with the As I Cuddle the Porcupine section. A lot of weird vocal effects on Peter Gabriel's voice, and a lot of just weird, just industrial sounding synthesizer tones that we hadn't really heard up to this point. So yeah, everyone seems to love this song. Everyone seems to think of it as a highlight of the album. And it did have a lasting impact because Peter Gabriel, this is one of the few Genesis songs that he would play after leaving Genesis. And you could see why. It really packs a punch. and this must have been a really strong inspiration for a lot of the punk bands at the time, ironically, because it just has that punk, I don't give a shit feel. And speaking of shit, I believe this is the only Genesis song to have a swear word in it, where Peter Gabriel says, "I'm not full of shit." So really cool line that really took me by surprise. And yeah, this is another song that really grew on me over the years. At first, I really didn't like it. I thought it was way too harsh. The production was way too muddy, which I still think holds true. The production on this song does sound really like muffled, but the song itself has really grown on me over the years, and it's just a great punch, a great way to start side two. So yeah, I'd give this one a really good 8.5 out of 10. Really strong track. So then coming in at track number 8, the great little nugget of Genesis instrumental awesomeness, Hairless Heart. And I really look forward to this song every time I hear The Lamb, because it's just a little short 2 minute kind of, kind of harkening back to Selling England by the Pound. It has a very classical feel, very laid back. It has that like swelling keyboard, that swelling mellotron that reaches those emotional heights. So yeah, very reminiscent of their previous work. And again, clocking in at 2 minutes, it's just a nice come down from back in New York City before the craziness of the album just comes back in full force with the next track. And yeah, really like this song. Really love Tony Banks playing on it. And it's gonna sound crazy, but it's a kind of a highlight for me. I really love it. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Hairless Heart is a great track, and I love how it just it musically represents the title character kind of like shedding off his tough exterior and really like delving within, taking a look at his true nature, at his true soul, and realizing that maybe he isn't as tough as he thought he was. And I guess this is where like the whole spiritual stuff starts coming in with the whole like El Topo and Holy Mountain influence. So yeah, really cool track. Love Hairless Heart.
Counting out time, got the whole thing down by numbers, all those numbers. Give me guidance, oh Lord, I need that now. The day of judgment's come, and you can bet that I've been resting for this testing, digesting every word the experts say.
All right, coming in at track number 9, we got the great song "Counting Out Time." I love this track. I mean, it's just so humorous, so quirky, so fun and enjoyable, and just honestly one of the highlights on this very dark album. You need lighthearted moments like this to really spice up an album of such ominous nature. And "Counting Out Time" is just that. I mean, it's just a lighthearted point in the middle of a vast sea of darkness. And I just love the track. It's so humorous. It's another kind of backstory song that describes Rail's first sexual encounter, where the poor guy, he actually went to the library, studied all the erogenous zones, all the little turn-on points, and then it all goes to shit. And it's just such a funny concept for a song. And there's just so many standout moments. Of course, the catchy lyrics that Peter Gabriel penned for the song, Steve Hackett's crazy fuzzbox or whatever, distorted guitar solo. I don't know what you want to call it. The heavy riff, the just the crazy sound effects like the pants zipping up. I love it. I love everything about it. I'm probably going to give it an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. It's just such an enjoyable track. And yeah, definitely one of the funniest Genesis songs.
Which has seeped out through the crack, and the tickler takes his tickle back. The carpet crawlers, he dare call us. We gotta get in to get
Track number 10, one of the most beautiful songs of all time, The Carpet Crawlers. I mean, what is there to say about this song? It's just one of the most it's just genius. It's a work of genius. It's one of the most soulful, one of the most beautiful vocal melodies you will ever hear in your life, and definitely one of the most enduring Genesis songs. I mean, this song was such a classic that they actually re-recorded it in fucking 1999 or something like that. When the band passed the Ray Wilson years, for God's sakes. And it's just, oh man, it's hard to describe how amazing this song is. Just the way it builds and gradually crescendos. The tinkling keyboards in the background that sound like harps. Peter Gabriel's vocal melody, which apparently is, according to him, is probably his favorite vocal melody that he recorded with Genesis. I mean, the guy worked day and night on that shit. And not to mention Phil Collins' backup vocals during the chorus is another very strong suit of the song. I mean, oh wow, it's just incredible. And unlike In the Cage, this song was made for Peter Gabriel's voice. I mean, I cannot imagine Phil Collins singing this song. You need Peter Gabriel because his voice is just so soulful, so it has a smoky quality to it, and it's just, oh my god, like I can't even describe it. It was perfect for Peter Gabriel's vocals. Definitely one of the greatest Genesis songs of all time. Like we're talking top 10, top 15. Definitely a 10 out of 10 and just a gorgeous song on the album. And the thing is, this isn't even the most gorgeous song on the album. There's one that even supersedes it in my opinion. So yeah, that's the Carpet Crawlers. Just let it wash over you.
I'm so
Fantastic.
alone with my fear, with everything that I hear, and every single door that I've walked through brings me back here again.
Closing out side one, we have another major highlight of the album, The Chamber of 32 Doors. I fucking love this song, guys. I mean, it's just such a unique Genesis song, both structurally and tonally. Tonally, it's different. It's way more American. It has a much bluesier sound than a lot of the other songs on the album. Very melancholic track. And I kind of like that because it leaves off disc one of the album on kind of like a sad note. And it kind of leaves you hanging, like what's going to happen with the character. It's about this character, just the frustration of trying to navigate this chamber of 32 doors that doesn't seem to be getting him anywhere. And it's just this describing this weird subterranean world, as I've mentioned before. And just very great blues slide guitar playing by Steve Hackett. Peter Gabriel's voice, again, at its best, at its most soulful. There's a lot of emotional climaxes, especially the section where he's singing, I'd give you all of my dreams if you'd help me find the way, blah, yada, yada, yada. That part there is just really a really strong emotional highlight. And the chorus is just really melancholic, really sad with the great piano playing in the background. Awesome song. I love it. I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. It's just another major highlight of the album. And that closes out disc one of the album. So then we change the disc, put on disc two, and a whole other world awaits us.
Confusion, all the voices shouting loud. I can only just hear a voice quite near say, please help me through the crowd.
Alright guys, so opening disc two of the album, we got the hard-hitting, punchy track, Lilywhite Lilith. And this song right here is Genesis doing classic rock. I mean, if you were to hear this song on the radio, you would just think it's just another classic rock song. But it's freaking awesome. I mean, for Genesis to pull off the classic rock sound like this, it's just really great. Really energetic way to start off disc two of the album. And yeah, I really love it. I mean, it's not a song that hits you really hard on the first listen, but after years of listening to it, it's a really cool track. And it has that great, that motif that repeats throughout the album with the dun-it, 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 which is just a cool riff, and it just kind of reminds you of like the previous songs on the album that utilize that cool riff there. And it has this nice Mellotron outro, which kind of leaves you hanging, with the white light entering the room, as Peter Gabriel describes in the lyrics, and something's approaching, something's about to happen, and yeah, again, it's just a really cool track. I would give it a pretty solid 8 out of 10.